So, very good morning, friends. Let me start my second session. This session, I'm going to share my research experience, what I have come across in the last maybe I think 16 to 17 years. Um, so, the title of the talk is on a neural network modeling approach, taking the trait of computer-aided clinical diagnosis. So I'm going to give a glimpses on one-dimensional signal and two-dimensional signal to some extent. Now, coming to the real-world problem, anything and everything, the first and foremost thing is the pattern recognition aspects. So when you look into this figure, the pattern itself is quite complex. When you look to this figure very closely, you will find a sniffing of a dog. So this is a kind of a complex pattern. So what I want to tell is that the real world problem is very complex in nature, and it has to be very dynamic and robust. So we need to deploy a very robust algorithm, and especially in terms of healthcare, it needs a very robust one. What is the need for going for this neural network based machine learning techniques? The first and foremost thing is that when you look at the computers, the human brain, that both has to be correlated. The complex problem and the data handling, that plays a very important role, which is feasible by deploying neural network based mechanism. The second point is, once you develop any kind of an algorithm, the next level is the neurochip. So the real-time feasibility is also possible by deploying the neural network based AI-based algorithms. This is the typical phenomena between the brains and the computers. Billions, trillions of neurons, synapses, and the nature of processing in terms of the biological neural network is parallel processing. It is how the neurons communicated from axon to dendrites by means of the synaptic effect, and based on the receptors and the sensors, sensing nation mechanism, the communication will be transmitted, and complete activity of the human is controlled by the brain based on the phenomena of the central nervous system, which is the acting agent. So taking the brain topology into account, mathematical modeling of those functionalities by means of an algorithm is nothing but the neural network. So this is a replica of the brain and the functionality of the central nervous system. All these things will be parallel in nature, and it has a very important characteristics, that is nothing but learning, self-tolerance or fault tolerance, robustness, and the possibility of converting the realization of the software into hardware chips. And it can handle complex patterns. It can give a solutions to simulate the biological models and any kind of a complex problem in related to clinical care. So the connection is a very important part. So how the brains are interconnected and how the communication is being transferred from one node to another node. The same topology is taken in case of the neural networks, where it is the synapse or the weight that carries the complete information. It stores the information, and based on the pattern of feedback or feed forward and nature of the learning functionalities like supervised learning, semi-supervised learning or reinforced learning, it will take the information accordingly. So based on this, you can do the prediction problem, generalization problem, fault tolerance problem, classification problems, all those things, forecasting and prediction, those kind of things can be solved by using this, the basic network connectivity. So learning is nothing but the change in the weights. The change in weights is nothing but in terms of the biological neural network. When there will be an internal external stimuli, neurons will be firing. So same kind of thing, any external input is given to the neural network, that firing of neuron will be taking place provided you have a synaptic weight which is nothing but the weights which have a positive value. If it is having a negative value, it will have the inhibitory aspect, inhibitory functionality. That means non-firing of neuron. So this is the fundamental part, you should know it, the relevancy between the biological neural network and the artificial neural network. So this is the brain models where the connectivity between the axon, dendrites and the synapse, all are billion neurons and a trillion synapses are happening. All those activities that has been modeled by applying a mathematical algorithm. Well, in terms of the computer-aided diagnosis, the information technology and biomedical integration plays a very evident role in providing the solutions for healthcare, especially for the clinical community. May it be a one-dimensional aspect or a two-dimensional aspect. This integration has brought a lot of laurels to the technology thanks to the revolving technology, the one especially recent technology, the telemedicine application or the remote monitoring situation, which is quite helpful, and the current trend is the mobile technology, smart mobile technology. All this technology is nothing but for clinical care. Integration is a very essential. Okay, coming into the computer-aided diagnosis. What is the need for computer-aided diagnosis? So the first and foremost thing about the clinical information is the physiological data. It can be a one-dimensional data or it can be a two-dimensional data. So by looking into the data visually and by making some sort of analysis, that makes a difference. This I told you in the last session also, the need for quantitative and qualitative analysis. Country like India is thickly populated. The amount of specialists available in a tertiary hospital or a urban hospital is very, very limited for the population we have. And it will be very difficult for the doctors to look into all the data analysis, very difficult. So if the doctor is trying to annotate 5 patient data, other 5 patient data can be quantified using the mathematical modeling, or in other words, AI-based mechanism. That's why the computer-aided diagnosis plays a very important role in taking the trait of the patient care. The first and foremost thing is, once the data is recorded, we need to measure the relevant vital patient characteristics. So taking any signal, any one-dimensional signal or two-dimensional signal. So when I say one-dimensional signal, it will be either in the time domain or frequency domain analysis. So you will have either one information. So I call it a one-dimensional signal, such as electroencephalography, electrocardiography, electromyography, like that, all kind of one-dimensional signal. On the other hand, two-dimensional, any medical image is referred as a two-dimensional information. If you have a voxel, then it will become a three-dimensional information. People are looking into 4D, 5D to consider a complex problem and getting a feasible solution. So in terms of the events, after the patient vital characteristic, we need to interpret the signals. That's why we apply different signal processing technique, and finally we provide the solution. Okay. Now in terms of the data, The nature of data is large, voluminous data. So it's very difficult for everyone to sit and do it. The cost factor is also matters a lot. Availability of the specialist in most of the sophisticated or the tertiary hospital is not available. So one solution is AI based. One important starting sector is the neural network based mechanism. What is the need for going for the quantitative and qualitative evaluation? See, the clinicians or the doctors, they are also human. So what they do is their interpretation is based on the skill set they have. The trained skill set, for example, if we analyze the MRI data, MRI image or a ultrasound image or a CT image or an X-ray image, based on his speciality, he can interpret it. Suppose a fresh clinician, a fresh doctor who are joining, if you ask him to interpret it, he cannot be in a position to interpret the result. So the qualitative interpretation is really questionable in terms of the clinical aspect. So to overcome these, a kind of a mechanism based on the input from the clinical community can be developed. That's called the computer-aided diagnosis. So in terms of the biomedical imaging, like the generic nature of the biosignal processing, it also starts with the information gathering, screening, diagnosing, continuous monitoring, therapeutic and control aspect, and finally the final evaluation is nothing but the quantitative evaluation. So what are the scenario of a medical image? The image will have computer processing and the interpretation of the images, computer aided diagnosis, image guided therapy, image guided surgery. So all these phenomena is possible using the mathematical model, which can be converted into a suitable pseudocodes by applying AI based algorithm. So compute image guided therapy is nothing but based on the subject, the activity and all, the external stimulation, functional electrical stimulation is one good example for image guided therapy. Image guided surgery is nothing but robotic surgery, telepresence surgery, all those things are good example for image guided surgery. In terms of the both one-dimensional and two-dimensional data, the procedure in terms of in the clinical scenario to be understood, one is the invasive procedure, another is the non-invasive procedure. So non-invasive procedure generally you will get clear ethical clearance very easily. An invasive procedure is nothing but the part of the body will be cut and they will put the sensor or for example, say they will put the intracardiac loop recorder, something like that, or pacemaker. Those are all invasive procedure. Anything measured in the skin area, skin surface of the skin, those are all non-invasive procedures. So when you acquire the data, whether it is a one-dimensional signal or two-dimensional signal, we have to understand the concept of invasive and the non-invasive procedure. So in case of the one-dimensional signal, there are cases where you will get the deep brain stimulation, you will have an invasive procedure. So using those things, they will put the catheter or the electrodes, invasive electrodes they will put. Other cases they will use the surface electrode, which have the capability of acquiring the signal, amplify the signals and digitize the signal. So the challenging part for the clinical community is that when they perform any kind of a surgery, they need to look into it how far the computer aided diagnostic tool is going to help. So this is the scenario for an image guided therapy. So in a case of a different typical operating theater phenomena or a scenario, doctor has to spend maybe any complicated surgery, he may have to stay there for 16 to 18 hours of time period. So in this case, if the robotic based computer aided machine learning is deployed, then his nature of job will be very easy, and he can perform the surgery without any kind of an issues and any kind of a complexity. So here I'm going to talk about the perspective of neural networks in healthcare. So where I'll be going to give the glimpses on some of the selected case study, because the time is very short, so it's very difficult for me to discuss all the case studies, and some of the case studies I'm going to give the glimpses. So my focus on this talk will be based on the EEG based one-dimensional data as EEG and two-dimensional MRI and retinal images. So in case of the EEG, I'll be discussing on the seizures detections, compression, data compression, how you can have the control on the depth of anesthesia, sleep studies, and in terms of the images, I'll be discussing on the image compression and transmission of the data and retinal image classification using the neural network based strategy. Coming to the concept of compression, okay, now what is the need for the compression? So this is a very fascinating field, in the sense that when you want to consider any kind of a data, you need a long-term recordings of signals, where being it is a one-dimensional data or a two-dimensional data. Two-dimensional data you will get in the frame of a slices, frames and all. One-dimensional, it will be a continuous signal, so it will be time versus amplitude. Now, if I want to analyze the data, then I need a long duration, in the sense that a short duration will not be yielding a critical information. For example, I'm considering a case of the brain signal. So when I do a brain signal analysis, I have to identify whether the signal has a symptom of any kind of a abnormal pattern due to the cortical behavior of the neuron. If the neurons are not firing at that particular node, then you will get a different abnormal pattern. Okay, so by using the different arrays, data size is large, number one. Second thing is, you need long duration of the recordings. That is very much essential to come to any kind of a control. Suppose you have to get a second opinion or any specialist opinion, you have to transmit the data. For example, some places they may not have the specialist available, you have to transmit this data. So the focus is the telemedicine applications. In all these picture, one aspect we need to look at is the storage. The second one is the bandwidth. So the need for compression is nothing but you have to compress the data so that it will be easy to store the data, easy to transmit the data. For example, EEG signal, each EEG sample is represented by 16-bit representation, for example. And if you have a 6 hours of data and sampling rate is 256 Hertz, then think about the storage requirement, 256 into 6 into 60 into the sampling rate. So the storage will be very high. And if you try to reduce the number of bits required for each sample representation, we may provide a solution in terms of storage as well as the transmission purpose. That's the purpose of the compression. Okay, what is the role of the neural networks in this phenomenon? So compression can be of a lossless nature, near lossless nature, and the lossy nature. What do you mean by lossless? Lossless is nothing but when you compress the data, when you retrieve the data, you should get the information as it is. This is essential for a clinical diagnosis. Suppose some information is transmitted from a tertiary hospital to a urban hospital. If I don't get the data as it is, I will label this as a kind of abnormal data, and I will say the patient isn't critical, he will be asked to admit to the hospital immediately for any kind of a surgery. But in reality, it is because of the noise or wrong interpretation. So, lossless is nothing but exact 100% replica or 100% reconstruct is the lossless. Near lossless is nothing but some kind of quantization is allowed so that the recovered or the reconstruct signal is sufficient for clinical diagnosis. Lossy compression is wherever the network problem arises. If the signal is sufficient to do initial screening and that is sufficient for a preliminary diagnosis, that can be considered as a lossy. For example, speech signal can be considered as a lossy because by hearing the speech, you can very well interpret, you can reconstruct the nature of the the phonetics and all. So speech signal can be considered as a lossy signal. Whereas all the biomedical signals or a physiological signal should always be a lossless nature and near lossless nature. So here, the neural network part, how it is going to do is that it will be act as a kind of a predictor. This is nothing but you will have a simultaneous prediction algorithm at the transmitting end and the receiving end. So what I will do is, suppose if I have a predictor order, say 10th order, I will take first 10 samples as it is to transmit it. There will be an encoder, it will encode it. For example, each sample is 16 bit. When it gets encoded, it will be say 9 bits. So it will be transmitting and receiving, and we will have a simultaneous neural network part at the receiving end. Instead of transmitting rest of the samples of 6 hours recording, I'll be transmitting only the error signal. I have already predicted. So the 10 samples, the 11th will be predicted automatically. 11th, based on the 11th and the input, the 12th will be predicted. So that error will be original minus the predictor will be the error. Error will be transmitted. So what happen is, instead of representing a 16-bit sample size, I'll be representing 8 bit. If I represent each sample by 8 bit, 50% of the saving is happening. So compression is 0.5. That is the meaning. So number of bits is reduced, then it will be easy for the transmission. It will satisfy the storage as well as the bandwidth. Now, once the error signal is transmitted, since I have a simultaneous setup at the receiving end with the error signal and a predictor signal, I can reconstruct the original signal. This is the way neural network will behave. So the selection of the neural network plays a very important role. So you have to configure the neural network models by considering the number of input nodes, number of layers, hidden layers. Then you have to configure the important network parameters like activation function between the input and the hidden to output, activation function, learning algorithm, all those things you have to configure to set up a counterpart neural network at the receiving. So in terms of the data, I'm considering as a data as a blocks. So only 20% of the samples will be used for training, rest of them will be predicted. So when you look into this plot, you can see that the initial original data has an amplitude of 2000. When I use the error signal, its amplitude is 200 millivolts. That means if 16 bit is required for an original signal, the error requires only 8 bit or 7 bit. So your efficiency of the algorithm lies on how you configure the neural network and how you reduce the number of bits required to transmit the data. So this is one example. So when you look into the original and predicted, it is more or less same. So taking this topology, I am transmitting only the error signal. So this is a two-stage compression scheme, taking all the combination encoder and the neural network. You can find the best model with the encoding scheme. Fine. You can also introduce a mathematical modeling along with that to improve the performance of the compression scheme in terms of the compression ratio and the number of bits required for transmitting the data. So when you do that, mathematical modeling, in terms of the aspects of the error signal, the error modeling, we can introduce a concept called bias cancellation. So bias is nothing but offset bias. There will be a lot of bias during the distribution. Assuming the distribution of error signal as a kind of a Laplacian distribution, you can see a offset error. Offset error means it will fall beyond the right side or left side of the zero value. So the error residues, if you remove the bias, then offset bias can be removed. The error have a perfect Laplacian distribution. So the black dotted lines refers to the error with bias cancellation. After the bias cancellation, you can see a distribution. So these modeling can improve the nature of the bits required for that. So the compression is really improved based on these things. So it can be represented in terms of the bit rate or the channel signal. The next aspect is the quality control compression scheme. Here what we can do is that you can introduce a quantization mechanism to number of bits requirement, so that at the reconstruction stage, at the receiving end, or the technician who is sitting at the receiving end for a remote access and transmission of the data, these can be considered, and based on the quantization, the near lossless compression scheme can be introduced and the lossy compression scheme can be introduced. So here, along with the predictor and encoder, there is an additional component called uniform quantization. There is a difference between non-uniform quantization and uniform quantization. So uniform quantization means across the distribution of the histogram of the data, all the data will be quantized uniformly. That is called the uniform quantization. So when you quantize the data based on the requirement, the residue signal, the error signal, the number of bits required will be very, very less. So this is the important concept behind that. So what happens is we have introduced a kind of a near lossless theoretical bound. So at one point of time, when you have the error threshold between the input and the reconstructed is to a specific value, the theoretical bound will be always less than the practical bound. So at one point of time, you will see that the theoretical bound will be greater than the practical bound. There you have to top the threshold mechanism. So first, when you look into the first column, up to threshold delta equal to 3, the theoretical bound is less than the practical bound. When del equal to 4, it looks like the theoretical value is greater than, so you have to stop until this case. So this kind of mechanism for different techniques, different neural network modeling techniques will give an improvement in terms of the number of bits required for transmitting the data. So I've used feed-forward model, feedback model, and standard statistical linear predictive technique like autoregressive modeling, finite impulse response modeling, all those things has been compared. So you can see the original and the reconstructed signals. Based on the diagnosis, you can introduce the fidelity measures like PSNR, PRD, all those things to judge the fidelity aspect of the data. So here you can see the cross correlation between the original and reconstructed is very effective, and you can see the number of bits required for the each sample is 2.82 compared to the 16-bit requirement. So where is 16, where is 2.82? That is the mathematical modeling we have performed using the neural network based algorithm. So the user can define the end user can define the nature of this aspect. He can decide the peak signal to noise ratio, whether based on the quality of the signal, if it is greater than 45 dB, he can choose the values according to this. So this is a user driven or the technician driven data based on the availability of bandwidth. If the bandwidth is good, no issue. If limited bandwidth, then he can reduce the peak signal to noise ratio to 35 dB, and he can take that specific algorithm which will give the better precision in terms of the reconstruction of the data. So the Selection of the algorithm plays very important role in real-time processing of all the data. So I'm introducing another technique here based on the correlation dimension. This is a kind of a non-linear based modeling techniques where we can see that the EEG signal being a non-linear signal, it will be chaotic in nature where you will see a lot of correlation between the data. So what we have done is the entire time series data has been divided into segment of one segment or 1 second duration or a windowing, and correlation dimension is calculated. Then the samples are rearranged based on the correlation dimension value so that closely correlated signals will be grouped together. So when you rearrange it, the number of bits required for transmitting these data, when you apply a neural network, the error model will require very less number of bits than the actual. So this
Hello, not audible, sir. Not audible.
Hello.
Sir, voice
Hello.
has gone out.
Yeah, Professor. Hello, Professor.
Sriram sir.
Hello, Sriram sir.
now it is audible.
Yes, sir. Now it is
Now
audible.
it's audible.
Yeah, audible.
Dear participants, kindly rejoin. Yes, sir. You can proceed, sir.
The slide is visible.
Yes, sir. Visible.
So this is the overall framework when you look into this. So we have introduced a pre-processing procedure, arranging the brain signal time series data based on the correlation dimension so that closely correlated samples will be arranged first than the unclosely correlated samples. So in terms of the neural network based prediction, the number of bits required for the error signal will be less compared to the earlier cases. So this is the overall framework. So different thresholds have been detected. So the entire time series data is divided into 2 blocks, 4 blocks, and 8 blocks. And correlation dimension threshold values has been detected accordingly. So this is a typical data sets 1 and data sets 3. You can see the distribution of the values of the correlation dimension. In terms of the configuration of the neural network, to start with, we have taken all the prediction algorithm as a 5th order predictor, and hidden neurons it's a trial and error basis. We have selected the 5 hidden neurons. In terms of the activation algorithm function, hidden and output layer as per the node we have chosen. In terms of the learning algorithm, we have used the Levenberg algorithm. That is the efficient algorithm in identity. It's a supervised learning procedure. And each cases, the number of epochs for training is given. So this is the original signal and the predicted signal. So compared to the earlier scenario, the number of bits required for transmitting the error signal is very less compared to that one. So in terms of the different predictor, the bits per minute, now it has come to, for example, so depending upon the number of blocks, it is coming to 3.5 bits, 4 bits, and 4.5 bits based on this. So what information we are getting is that any mathematical modeling along with the neural network mechanism for training is feasible to cater the need of the real-time problems, but the real-time problems are complex in nature. So in this case, the complex problem is storage of information for retrieving these things. So offline analysis can be done because we have, suppose the 100 patients are coming to the neurological department, the doctor want to refer the data at a later point. So keep in mind that per day 100 patients, if per month is 100 into 30 into say 6 hours of data, he needs more storage space. So he can introduce this machine learning, artificial intelligence or neural network based mechanism to compress the data and store it, and it can be read. So that's about the one-dimensional signal processing. The second factor I'm going to give the glimpses is the EEG signal processing in terms of the other classification problem. So in terms of the pattern classification problem, the understanding of the distribution of the real-time time series one-dimensional biomedical data is very, very important. In terms of the EEG signal, unlike ECG signal, this is a non-linear signal. It's very difficult to predict the data because of its non-linearity. So stationarity condition has to be deployed. So stationarity means mean equal to 0 and variance equal to 1. So you have to apply your windowing algorithm to segment the data, and you have to extract the features. The selection of the features plays a very important role. Then once the features are selected, extracted, if 100 plus features are there, then you have to select the optimal feature selection. Then you can do the normalization of the data. Then you go for the classification. So in terms of the classification, now several AI-based techniques are there. I'm restricting my attention only to neural network-based algorithms. So the classification problem is nothing but it can be a binary classification problem, or it can be a multi-classification problem. So binary classification is nothing but normal, abnormal. If it is a multi-classification problem, depending upon the data, you can do that. For example, in case of image processing, it will be normal, benign, and malignant. So based on the nature of the problem, you can define it accordingly. So one such problem I'm considering is the epilepsy detection. So epilepsy is nothing but is the nature of the recurrent seizure mechanism due to the cortical potential aspect that is reflected in the neurons. If the firings of neurons are not proper in the cerebral regions, then due to the unconnectivity, the mechanism that will be reflected in the data, that is called the seizure. So seizures is totally an unpredictable one. Sometimes it will be it will occur for a shorter duration. Sometimes it occurs for a longer duration. So the phenomena of detecting the seizure is quite complex. Physically, the doctor has to sit and annotate a long duration recording, which is very, very tedious and cumbersome procedure. So to overcome this, a simple automated mechanism can be introduced just to classify whether it is a normal tag or an epileptic tag. So here I have considered open source data, University of Bonn EEG data, where you have set A and set B using the normal this thing. Those are labeled as eye closed and eye open recordings. Set C, set D are intracranial recordings, and set E will be the extracranial recording. So number of EEG files are 100 into 23 point seconds recordings. So here I have considered a feedback neural network that is called the recurrent Elman network. Due to the nature of the feedback in nature, the learning capability was pretty good compared to the other cases. So we have considered the binary case as normal and abnormal. In case of the multi-classification problem, we have taken focal interictal activity, ictal activity, and non-focal activity. So non-focal interictal activity is nothing but the occurrence of seizure is very less, predominant in terms of the focal, in terms of ictal activity, and it will be predominant in terms of the focal interactivity. See, in terms of the classification problem, we have used the supervised algorithm. So any value is 0, it will be referred as focal interactivity. If it is 0.5, it's ictal, and it is 1, it's a non-focal activity. Threshold have been fixed for the classification points based on the permutation combination of the trial and error procedure. So this is a typical recurrent Elman network. These are the Elman network parameters, and evaluation metrics is sensitivity, specificity, and the overall accuracy. So this is a typical case for a binary classification problem. So the overall performance, all these cases available. So one of the important aspects in terms of the neural network is the configuration of the network. So when you say configuration of network, all the network parameters has to be taken into account, starting with the input node, hidden nodes, output nodes, activation function, learning function, and the deployment of all the functionality. So we made one attempt by using a multi-layer perceptron or a backpropagation neural network classifier for recognition of the intra-ictal epileptic seizures. So what are the different features we have extracted is we have used the Shannon entropy, log energy entropy, spectral entropy, and Renyi entropy, and 3 seizure aspects has been considered, and all the data has been taken into account for different classification problems, say binary classification as set C and set E, set D and set E, set CDE, set CD. So like that we have done all different multi-classification. So here the main aspect is the optimal configuration of the network, taking all the transfer functions, taking all the training function combination, the best has been deployed finally as a robust algorithm for this data. So this is the typical feature value of a log energy entropy values. You could see a very good discrimination between the pre-ictal activity, post-ictal activity, and the epileptic activity. That is the complete seizure, level of seizure, predominant seizure, then and there is the pre-ictal and the post-ictal activity. So the selection of the features is very important while feeding the input to the neural network. So since you could see a kind of a discrimination in the pattern itself, since we have to make automated data, that's why we go for the neural network. Otherwise, a simple threshold based mechanism is sufficient. But since we have 24 hours data and large patient volume has to be considered, that's why we go for the neural network based machine learning algorithm. So what we have done is we have taken all the different cases. We have taken the time factors for all the cases, and the receiving operating characteristics is a very important aspect in case of the neural network, and it tries to give a very good area under the curve value closely equal to 1, and all the optimized algorithms in terms of the learning function, active function, learning algorithm, all those things have been taken into account for each combination, whether it is a binary classification or a multi-classification between set C, D, E. You could see the performance metrics like mean square error, classification accuracy, and the ANOVA, statistical analysis. All those things gives a very acceptable remarks in terms of the claims made in this study. So the results finally it states that for activation function, tan sigmoid and pure sigmoid found to be the optimal one, and Levenberg-Margaret backpropagation learning algorithm will be the optimal one. In terms of the hidden network, we can go for maximum 10 neurons. You can go for more than that, but it will give the same results, so the complexity can be avoided, and the number of the classification accuracy in terms of correctly detected patterns, wrongly detected patterns, sensitivity, specificity, all those things, it's quite acceptable in nature. The extension of the work was introduced in terms of the focal and non-focal epileptic seizures using a multi-feature mechanism and optimized support vector machine neural network model. So again, we have taken the data from the University of Barcelona open source database. It comprises of around 20 seconds of 370 data samples. After sampling all those things based on the statistical analysis, we have derived the best samples, Then we remove the outliers, then introduce an optimized support vector machine classifier. Then we introduce a tenfold cross validation procedure to validate the data, labeling whether it's a focal data or a non-focal data. This is a very important phenomena for the clinician to identify the focal activity and non-focal activity. Visually, they can't interpret it because it's very tedious exercise. So an automated algorithm has been derived. So based on these things and all, we have derived the minimum objective function, that is the optimization functionality has been introduced for all these sets. And support vector machines, in terms of the receiving operating condition, it gives the different combination up to 0.89, which was found to be better than the existing work reported in the literature. So 26 features have been derived and 21 features were found to be very remarkable. The classification accuracy, the earlier report for 80.2, since we have removed the outliers, we were able to get a better classification accuracy. And in terms of the existing work, it is found to be better than the existing. The another study we made it using the wavelet packet log entropy and the norm entropies using the recurrent Hellman network. So again, we have considered the epileptic data and the non-epileptic data from the University of Bonn data. And what we understood, inferred from this, that when we do the power line noise removing, as a pre-processing step, there we could see a lot of improvement in terms of the pattern recognition, which was not reported earlier. So by introducing a spectrogram analysis, we were able to see that power line noise interference, that yellow bright line that shows that one. So using the LMS algorithm, which we are known that is one of the important algorithm, least mean square algorithm, we introduced that adaptive limit, removed the noise and try to extract the features. So this was significant in terms of the recognition of the pattern in a better way. So this is normal condition, pre-ictal condition and epileptic conditions. The statistical analysis, the box plot gives the outliers, removals and the nature of the pattern in terms of the log energy and the norm energy. So finally, we were able to get 99.7 for normal pre-ictal classification, normal epileptic 99.7, and pre-ictal epileptic condition is 99 point, almost 100% for a real-time problem. So this is the classification of the recurrent Hellman network. It's a binary classification. You can see the distribution of these things, and relative performance of the network in terms of all the different conditions is depicted. Further, to extend the work, we try to introduce a further mathematical modeling concept called successive decomposition index, which is somewhat similar to wavelet transform, but some kind of different phenomena we have proposed, and that really worked well for our analysis. So again, we use the support vector machine model, the neural network model. So in terms of the this is a successive linear index, it is almost a topology of discrete wavelet decomposition, where when you do decompose the signal, first you will have a high pass filter and low pass filter, then finally you will consider the least coefficient, whatever you obtain from high pass filter, low pass filter. Whereas in case of this successive index, there will be no limitation in the decomposition levels. The last level will be considered for the further analysis. So the decomposition level can be defined by the user based on the requirement. So we have considered the EEG time series as a time series data, and we introduced the two terminology called X plus and X minus. X will be the mean of the absolute of the time series, and average will be the X minus. Based on that, we have developed a vector matrix based on the X plus and X minus. And the successive decomposing index is derived based on this. So the successive decomposing index is based on the number of samples and the values of X plus and X plus plus and X minus. So this is the overview of the framework. This is a real-time scenario where the data is pre-processed and successive decomposed index is derived during the training process, and during the testing process using the cross-validation procedure, you can test the data for the binary classification. So the spectrogram of the data and the amplitude frequency distribution of the each channels is depicted here. Okay. Now, finally, what we have done is we have developed a automated biomarker, which I'm going to show the graphical user interface, which we have developed for a few problems. So when you look into the first plot, whatever the bold one, these are all abnormal. So in terms of the topological plot, that is also distributed. In terms of the classification also, this signals is normal, this is abnormal. So when you look into the patterns, the zeros and ones really refers to normal and abnormal. So this is the best example for the location of the normal and the epileptic pattern by introducing a successive decomposition index as a feature and using the support vector vision as a model for the pattern classification. So another model which we have extended is the discrete wavelet transform model by introducing the sigmoid entropy in time and frequency domain for the first time for seizure detection. So what we have taken is we have taken both sigmoid entropy for the first time in both time domain and frequency domain. So you can see the nature of the signal and the corresponding spectrogram. So these are the different spectral wavelet decomposition level. So the optimized wavelet which we have reported in the earlier work, those based on that we have taken the Haar wavelet and the Ibis wavelet, and 5-level decomposition has been considered. And the 3 different data have been considered. One is our Ramaya database, Ramaya Hospital proprietary database, and University of Bonn, Germany database, and CSB MIT is the standard open source database. And this is the distribution of the sigmoid activation function. So when you look into the time domain and frequency domain, the distribution of the sigmoid entropy is exploited here, and based on that it will classify whether it is a normal or abnormal. So it's a binary classification, so zeros or 1. This plot clearly shows the distribution of the classification process. So in terms of all the measures, sensitivity, specificity, classification, accuracy, and F measures, we deployed the other known entropy algorithms like Shannon entropies, Rayni's entropies, and Thalys entropy. Interestingly, our report, the simulation or the experiment results, it was found that the sigmoid entropy was dominant in all the conditions, and that was found to be the best results compared to the other known entropy. So in terms of the computational time and the relative performance, all those things shows the efficiency of the sigmoid entropy in all the databases. Some cases, for example, in MIT database, it's more or less, there will be a very minor change, a minor improvement in terms of the thing, but whereas in terms of the University of Bonn and our proprietary database, we could see the relative performance far better than the other known algorithm. Then the other work we have taken in terms of the intensive care unit. So in case of the intensive care unit, the monitoring of seizures is very crucial because the subject will be in the very critical condition. So it is impossible for the doctor to sit round the clock and monitor. So we need a robust algorithm, especially in case of the ICUs when the subject is admitted, any kind of surgery has been taken place or any surgery has to be taken place or has been done already, and his brain pattern has to be monitored continuously, then special care has to be taken into account. So we have developed a patient independent algorithm for this work, and we have introduced a novel algorithm called novel adaptive median future baseline correction to improve the performance of the algorithm, and it is completely a patient independent aspect. So this is the typical framework of the algorithm, where we have the data from the University of Maastricht, Netherlands, Maastricht Medical Center, Netherlands. We have a close collaboration with them. So the raw data we have collected, we have removed the artifacts, noise other than that. We introduced a new defined feature. One is the successive decomposition index, as well as the matrix determinant, another feature which we have reported in our earlier work. Then in order to remove the outliers, we have removed the outliers and we have corrected it statistically. Then we introduced the adaptive median coefficient correction. Then we introduced the support vector mission for the training, and same thing was being used for the testing purpose. So these are the different data pattern when you look on the pre-processed EEG signal, which will be marked, labeled by the doctor, which are the regions are normal, which are the artifacts, all those things have been labeled. And the spectrogram also really gives the distribution of the pattern for each channels. When you look at it, these are around 64 channels, 128 channels, each channel, how the spectrogram of normal and epileptic data are distributed, all those things are reported. So in terms of the median algorithm, whatever we are referred, so first thing is we take all the subjects data. We have around 45 plus subject data, and we have first taken the feature of the successive decomposition index or a matrix determinant, calculate the median of that values for seizure and non-seizures. Then we determine the global median value, then estimate the median of single subject for all the cases. Then we introduce the adaptive median coefficient using the global and the local median. Then the baseline correction has been done accordingly. So this is the overall framework. You can see that the typical one channel recording is shown. After pre-processing, successive decomposition index has been derived. Then matrix determinant has been derived. Support vector mission classification is given. Then based on the thresholding, you can see when you use the support vector machine, these parts are false alarms. That means these are all the false rate is more here. Now when I use the median, adaptive median technique and the post processing, you can see exactly the same thing. This is matches with the ground. So this is very, very important to the point to say that if there is a seizure, it has to detect seizure. So the false alarm rate should be very, very minimal in case of the intensive care unit recordings. There are two scenarios in EEG. One is the normal lab-based or the sleep lab EEG recordings, where the subject will be trained for whether he has brain-related any abnormal patterns or not. The other for surgical procedure, where the patient is admitted in the intensive care unit. So pretty much care has to be given in terms of the intensive care unit, where the false alarm should be completely reduced, and we were able to give a very fruitful results in terms of exact detection, reducing the false alarm rate, where you can see the support vector machine, the false alarm rate, these are all wrong one. False alarm rate is more here. So here also, this is completely removed by adopting the adaptive median technique and the post processing. So in terms of the sensitivity, specificity, and area under curve, all those things, this gives a very clear picture in terms of both the things. So we use two features separately and we use both the features together, and in all the cases without pre-processing and without post-processing and with pre-processing, we could see a tremendous results, and this has given a remarkable claims that it was better than the work reported by the earlier researchers from the same Maastricht community, and we were able to get a very good results. Now, ultimately for clinical community, what is the solution the biomedical engineer has to do is, the biomedical engineer has to give a kind of a automated biomarker. So that is nothing but display the data, and automatically it has to scan and tell that every 1 second window it's normal and abnormal. So that is the best way to give the solution to the clinical community. So I'm just going to show the demo of what we have developed based on the algorithm. So this is automatically, the user has to select it or you can make it. So it gives automatically labeling normal, N is normal, E is epileptic. So by visually you can see that normal and epileptic patterns, but this is the automated labeling is essential for the clinical community. So the engineers, we need to do, this is the crucial point which we have to develop. So this is one example. Let me go to the other example. So this is a successive decomposition index long-term EEG recording. So we can make this entire process also automated, exporting the data from the data storage. Then it displays the data. Then the next one is you can do the pre-processing and it will give the display of the data. Then all the clean data can be used. Next is the interpretation using the successive index algorithm. It performs the extraction and label whether it is normal or not. And the topographical graph also gives a real-time picture about the nature of the classification output. So you can see a clear-cut picture about wherever the normal pattern is there and abnormal pattern is there. It gives a clear-cut picture. So the topographical map changes in terms of the seizure pattern. When it is normal, it is showing it is not that much dominant. And your neural network based algorithm classify it accordingly very clearly. Says this is a normal activity. Wherever it is normal, it is normal. Taking all the channels into account. It's not a single channel, it's a multi-channel recording. All the data has been labeled in the form of a matrix and taken it for the analysis. So wherever the pattern is changes, you can see that moment the cursor goes there, it will automatically show the different topographical cases and shows the results. So this is a clear-cut information which is essential for the clinical community, and of course by showing these kind of strategy, the clinical community will definitely be interested to work with us, and we can work together and providing solutions to the clinical care. Let me come to the next concept called anesthetic depth level detection. This is a very peculiar problem in terms of the surgery. See, before performing the surgery, the doctor has to administer the anesthesia. See to that the patient goes to the first level of conscious to the unconscious stage to some extent, not in depth, so that it will be a problem. So the transition from drowsiness to unconscious is very important, and only experienced doctor is most of the time is available in the anesthesiology department, where if they administer the anesthetic drug more, it will the subject will be collapsed. So this is very trivial in nature, and one such attempt we have done is that monitoring the depth of anesthesia taking the EEG. So what we have done is we have made one such study by having a collaboration with Oxford University UK. So the data has been collected from the University of Oxford some time back, and we have taken the recording. So propofol was the anesthetic agent, and we have considered the total 5 levels of anesthetic depth is low, medium and high. Low is nothing but the patient is normal, eye opening, all those things. Medial is slightly drowsy. High level is completely reaching to the unconscious stage. So when you look into the nature of the EEG recordings, the amplitude variation give a clear picture about A0 to A4. A0 is the complete wake of the condition of the subject, and A3 is slightly, it's okay. So we combine A1, A2, A3 together as medium and high as A4. So 3-level classification problem was considered here. So different features can be used. I just showed a correlation dimension value for the case. This is first exponent value. And since it's a multi-classification problem, again we use the recurrent Hellman network. And again we fix the threshold values. Again we fix the target value, low, medium and high. Then we deploy the Hellman algorithm, and these are the patterns. For low, 100% we have got, medium is 99.3, and overall classification accuracy was 99.6. And after this procedure, we have given them a kind of a software package using I think some 10 years back we did it. So we used the Visual C++ GUI, and we gave this package to the Oxford University. Then they deployed this thing. Okay, in terms of the other aspect, it's sleep, one of the sleep stage study. The other one is the alcoholic detection. So now the alcoholic screening is quite common in Western countries, in that whether those who are coming for job and whether they have the influence of alcohol or not. And so EEG based biometric identification also is one of the screening procedure in some of the Western countries. So taking this point into account, we have done some work related to sleep studies and alcoholic detection. So again, you use the multi-layer perceptron concept. It is a feed-forward concept, and introduce all the conditions and all. And in terms of the alcoholics, we have used the open source database from UCA database, where alcoholic group and control group recordings were available. And we deployed the spectral entropy features, and we configured the multi-layer perceptron neural networks and compared the results with the KNN algorithm. And the entire algorithm, the entire performance was evaluated in terms of classification accuracy as well as the computational time. So this is the parameters or the notation that has been used for the condition. So this is the distribution binary classification, where you can see the automated distribution of this thing, alcoholic and the control group. The other results we have used is the sleep database. Again, same multi-layer perceptron results is compared with the KNN classifier. Different topology has been used, and we were able to get a classification accuracy of 99.2. And all the cases, the supervised training model, the neural network performed, or I can say outperformed than the KNN model, linear model. So this is the other way. So automatically annotate the data when the doctor or the clinician is viewing the signal. It will automatically label whether it is wake or stage 1. So here we have considered to start with the binary classification problem, sleep or wake. Awake is the first stage, stage 0. Stage 1 is the sleep substage. So this is the way to label it, which is essential for the doctor, so that if you develop an automated package based on these kind of mechanisms, it can create a kind of a big revolution in the clinical. So that's the one-dimensional data. Let me go to the medical image compression, or the two-dimensional data, as an example. So here I'm going to give the glimpses on medical imaging, 2D and the 3D aspects. 3D is nothing but it can be visualized as a 2D images stacked one after another, so that we will consider the rectangular voxel region as an additional point. So we have used different algorithms to evaluate it. So to start with the compression, we have used the different transforms like starting with Hartley transform, cosine transform, wavelet transform. All the mechanism have been done. And here the compression can be a lossless compression or near lossless compression or lossy compression, depending upon the end user requirement. It depends upon the clinician's requirement and available bandwidth. We can choose the nature of the algorithm. So stakes of images, MRI images have been considered for this study. And this is the performance metrics of discrete Hartley transform, cosine transform and Fourier transform in terms of the peak signal to noise ratio. As you all aware of the, when you increase the or decrease the bits per sample or bits rate for each pixel intensity, the peak signal to noise ratio should be high. So that is the scenario for this study. So in terms of the computational complexity also, we looked into this 3D transform, DFT, DHT and DCT. We were able to solve the problem using the discrete Hartley transform, which is a combination of real and complex values together. Next thing is in terms of the telemedicine application, the receiving end, instead of collecting the entire images, you can stop at one point of time. If you are able to diagnose the specific images with critical diseases and all, that's sufficient so that the bandwidth can be saved. So this is the scenario for the progressive transmission. So we have used the wavelet transform and evaluated the fit encoder through internet transmission of the data. We have used mean square error, peak signal to noise ratio, structural similarity index and mean structure similarity index ratio. We have used the spine images for this work. The images has been reconstructed after transmitting the data through the internet thing at a different compression ratio. Another data we have considered X-ray chest DICOM image. And this figure shows the bit rate versus the peak signal to noise ratio for different encoding technique. Those days the SPIT and JPEG encoding techniques were very, very dominant. So we made all the JPEG variants along with the SPIT encoding technique. So this is the case for the DICOM X-ray images. So finally, what is the message we are trying to convey is that low bit rate is also feasible provided it is used for telemedicine application where the user can stop at one point of, instead of collecting the 100% of the images, he can stop to 85% or 90% the image, leaving the background thing so that he can save the bandwidth, and at the same time we can also take this process for storage of the data. Okay, the next example is the diabetic retinopathy is another example. So this is quite common when you have your dominant sugar value, it will affect your eyesight. So in terms of the diabetic retinopathy, we have three different stages: preliminary screening, then next one is diabetic retinopathy presence or not, then next one is proliferative non-proliferative. So the ultimate purpose of this study was to develop a multimedia cure so that it can be freely screened without involving any technicians and all. That means like our ATM machine, you can go to a multimedia cure center, you will have the image screening camera where you have to press the button, the image will be taken and you will get a kind of a report whether your eyesight is normal, whether you have a first stage, whether you have diabetic retinopathy, if diabetic retinopathy, whether it is proliferative or non-proliferative. That was the intention, but we were not able to realize it for real-time solutions, but we were able to model using the neural network algorithm. So for quick mass screening, we developed an initial screening procedure where intensity scaling of the retinal fundus image was taken. Then the second method, we use the pre-processing procedure, contract enhancement, and the edge detection technique. Then we use the automated gray ratio thresholding and ISO data algorithm. Then using the backpropagation neural network, using the standard parameters, we determine whether it has a mild, moderate, or severe diabetic retinopathy. So this is the 3-level stage, quick screening, whether diabetic retinopathy present or not. Then third one is mild, moderate, and severe. So this is the original fundus image. We have a red plane image, green plane image, and the blue plane image has been considered. Then use the different filtering technique. The Vienna technique was very effective. Then we use the histogram equalization Klahe algorithm for enhancing the images. Then we adjust the intensity limits. Then we use the edge detection algorithms, different algorithms, detected the edges. Then we introduce the morphological segmentation technique. Then we did the color normalization to identify the label region for the clinicians to annotate the data properly. So these are the different stages which we consider it. An automated algorithm, it says presence of diabetic retinopathy or not. The second one is proliferatic or non-proliferatic. And third stage is mild, moderate, and severe. So ultimately, these kind of AI-based or machine learning, neural network-based algorithm will give a clear-cut picture about the mechanism of developing algorithm deployment into a kind of a package and integrated to any kind of hardware for real-time analytics. So it will say severe, moderate, or this is my severe. Okay. So to put it in a nutshell, let me think about the scenario what we have in the near future. Assuming that a man with a new prosthetic arm, he can feel things and thereby grip X without breaking them. That means prosthetic arm is nothing but complete replacement. It's artificial arm. And his prosthesis has a computer in the forearm that is wired to a mechanical hand and to a plunger device on his chest. The hand signals up the wires to the plunger which pushes the spring. Then stimulate the nerves in the chest which has been rewired then used to be in the upper arm to transmit the sensation. So artificially, it's nothing but the bio arm which he can sense and he can feel. That is the future challenge which the deployment of AI is predominant here. And in terms of the biomedical engineering community, we have a strong clinical pull because data size is large and interpretation of the data, arrangement of the data, processing of data is predominant, and you can come with lot of solutions for these things. Maybe in 2015, a kind of an ambulance will be available to our door, which will be equipped to assess the patient status more thoroughly using an onboard blood analysis, scanners, and computer diagnosis to facilitate proper and efficient patient handling during transport upon arrival at the hospital. So this is nothing but you have a complete screening at the ambulance itself and communicate to the clinician or the emergency department the nature of the criticality of the patient. That will help a lot. In fact, this is a kind of a real challenge. You go to any emergency department in any hospital, doctor is really looking for that, and we have a mobile technology, but still there is no interface has been happened. I think this is an open problem for us. Then come with a kind of a smart technology. That means when the patient is transmitted through the ambulance to the emergency care ICU, you should have a complete vital parameter transmitted in real time. Your AI based or machine learning should annotate the data, give the scenario and label whether severe, moderate, or this thing. Based on that, you can use the triaging phenomena to give the priority to the patient. This is the future challenge. Of course, the role of technology and the machine learning algorithm is going to help. We are talking about the digital era, so all kind of technologies available now. Smart health monitoring using the wearable sensors are available. So lot of data are being generated. Smart healthcare solution to smart healthcare, especially for COVID era. These technology by deploying the AI based is definitely going to rock this world. This is a global problem. So being a engineering fraternity, you can consider this. So as a concluding remarks, I want to highlight that technology is always advancing like anything. In order to compete the technology, we have to well versed with that, and we have to do a lot of background. We have to read a lot. We have to get involved. Just proofreading kind of thing will not help. We have to go in depth, and the challenges of this present era, especially in terms of healthcare, is huge. I think the engineers can provide a lot of solutions. So in terms of the collaboration which we have carried out, or which we are currently carrying out, one is our own Ramaya Teaching and Multi-Specialty Hospital in NIMHANS, and I have strong collaboration with the University of Aveiro in Portugal, Maastricht University in Netherlands, University of Ghent in Belgium. I would like to acknowledge Dr. Pandian, Professor Iyengar, Dr. Rangaraj Iyengar, one of my mentors, all my UG, PhD, PG students of my previous institutions and current institutions. Especially this team is closely working with me on neuro-related, cognitive neuroscience related work, and special credit goes to Dr. A.S. Hegde, who is the director of the Institute of Neuroscience in Ramaya Memorial Hospital, and we have the clinical team visited from University of Maastricht. Okay, thank you, and I would like to move forward to the questionnaire session.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your research work. So I request the participant to post their queries in the chat box.
The same email.
Hello. Hello, sir.
Maybe you can post your query, then I can take one after another.
Hello, sir.
Hello, madam.
Post your queries.
Madam, you can post your queries in the chat box. I request the participants to post their queries in the chat box. I'll ask.
Autism detection, I think it's very easy to get the autism.
One question from autism detection.
It's very difficult. We have to go with the NPS. Okay, data set links. I think these slides will be posted to the audience at a later point. You will get. Autism can be.
ಹೌದಾ
Rheumatoid arthritis disease, I think you have to check clinical. No, for artifacts removal for EEG is mandatory. It's mandatory because it will wrongly tell the normal pattern as a epilepsy. So for epilepsy analysis, artifacts removal is mandatory. EEG data is available, open source database available. Already you can just Google it, EEG open source data, you will get it. My mail ID is sriram@msrit.edu. I will send. Sorry, I forgot to include that. So I've shared my mail ID. Okay, see, in case of the EEG being a nonlinear in nature, it depends upon demography of the data. So, for example, the entropy based and statistical things works well for our thing. I am not included one of our work which we have published very recently in clinical neurophysiology. You can look at the cross database analysis where we have showed that using the cross database, we can get a kind of a robust result. So that can be looked into.
Sir, but if we make use of algorithms, machine learning algorithms like genetic algorithms and all, there also you can get conditions of optimality, and there also you can tune your parameters. So like I was wondering, you have done so much good, marvelous works, research works are at par. They are of global repute. So I was wondering why the researchers didn't try optimizing through genetic algorithms, machine learning using GAs.
Absolutely right. I agree. See, genetic algorithm, you can use it provided the computational complexity, you are not bothering on the computational complexity. Suppose for in ICU cases, for me, the computation is not a problem. I want the robustness. I want the precision in terms of the false alarm detection. So in that case, you can go for complex genetic algorithm. You can use the parallel and serial genetic algorithm as an optimization technique. Otherwise, you can do the statistical t-test analysis and particle swarm optimization. All those things you can do it, provided you have a large feature set. Okay, in terms of a different country data sets, it's fine. Demographically, it's only the algorithm development. Please keep in mind, the algorithm development, irrespective of the country's demographic condition, you are doing a signal processing algorithm, it's fine. You can do that, then you go to the clinician. So the results, that will help them, that will give them a chance to you that yes, you have done something, and you can easily convince the people.
Because the only drawback with ANN models is that you cannot drill into, you cannot have a drill insights of the feature vector that you are using. Because once the parameters are initialized, the tuning of the parameters are done automatically. So you don't get a good insight of the feature vector that you are using. And
the tuning of the weights, you can do it using the genetic algorithm. That is possible. See, everything rely on the robustness of the algorithm. Once you get this, that's why we do the cross validation. The purpose of cross validation is we repeat the process simulation again and again to ensure that whether we are getting the dynamic range with error tolerance is 0.1 to 0.2. As long as it is there, it is fine. Otherwise, you have to go for the tuning. Okay, and apart from MATLAB, you can use the other platform like Scilab. Now, Scilab is open source, but it is computationally high. Other than that, Python is the order of the day. Please, the computer science engineers can go for Python because all the MATLAB programs or anything, it can be easily converted into Python language.
Yes.
And the industries always look for these open source algorithms.
Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
For autism, its EEG will be better than the fMRI. fMRI is a little bit complicated. The low dose imaging is fine, but getting the images is very difficult. The dosage level has to be tested, and when you define the dosage, the ethical aspects has to be looked into it. So please be careful with low dose imaging. If you are working with a clinician, there is no issue. Open source EEG sample is already I mentioned. Just Google it, EEG open source data. You will get a lot of data, including BCA competition data. And EEG lab is another reference. If you want to work with that, you can make use of EEG lab. It's an open source platform with library functions that is available. Data set for RA is, what is RA? Mr. Shashidhar, what is RA? Rheumatoid arthritis is a little bit difficult. You need to talk to the clinicians directly because these are all somewhat complicated things which will not be available in the open source for initial setting. So you can try with some open source data, develop some algorithm, go to the clinicians, say that your algorithm work for this data. So if you get rheumatoid arthritis, you can automatically detect it. That can be done.
Hello. Hello, Professor. Hello.
I think if no other
Hello.
question is there, I would like to wind up my session.
Yes, sir. Professor Dr. Sriram, thank you for your valuable information in both the session, covering perspectives of machine learning for biomedical applications, opportunities, and challenges in the first session, as well as followed the second session titled Computer-Aided Clinical Diagnosis, a Neural Network Modeling Approach. Hope your session would be an advantage for the participants to continue their research in the respective area. I thank you once again, sir, for giving your valuable time and sharing your knowledge to this TEL FTP. Thank you once again, sir. On behalf of the UB Reddy College of Engineering and from the E&I department, I thank you once again, sir.
Thank you very much.
Participants will meet at the third session at 3 p.m. Thank you, Ananda.
Leave the meeting at attendance link will be shared in the WhatsApp group.